In John 3 verse 3 to 4, Jesus says, "Most assuredly I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." In response to this, Nicodemus says, how can a man be born again when he's old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born? This is an example of reification. Okay, it's this fallacy where you take an abstract concept or idea and interpret it to be a physical reality. We see this I've heard this from certain pastors when they read Revelation 21:1, where it says there'll be a new heavens and a new earth and there will be no more sea. Because the first heaven and earth are going to pass away, and then in the new one there'll be no more sea. And they all start joking about, well, I used to love fishing, but I guess I won't be fishing anymore. But who cares? There's going to be so many other activities to do. There's going to be so much room for so many more activities than just fishing. And they completely miss it because they've got themselves into this logical fallacy where they have interpreted something that's rather abstract and deep and profound to be some physical reality. Much like Nicodemus did. And much like the Catholic Church does with John 6:56, where Jesus says, whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remain in me and I in them. So the Catholics read that and then come up with something called the transubstantiation, so that when they take the bread and they take the wine, they believe that they have consumed the actual flesh and the actual blood, the biological substances that were in the body of Jesus back in the 1st century. They believe that by a miracle, the bread and the wine become his living organic tissue in their stomach. How weird is that? How weird is that? That's so strange, and that's one of the differences between the Anglican Church, the Church of England, which really strongly resembles the Catholic Church, but even they saw the nonsense in that. Even they understood this fallacy of reification that was going on here. And another mistake that's often made in religion, spirituality, is Presentism. So Presentism is the idea of, uncritically holding on to current attitudes, especially when you're looking back into history. So instead of seeing things in the proper context, you look back at things and see them through the norms of today, using today's concepts and today's understandings. You don't objectively take a step back and look at the context of a thing in the 1st century. For instance, if we're talking about ancient antiquity, if we're talking about the scriptures, what we see today is people picking up books such as the book of Revelation, which in the very first chapter tells us that it's written to the 7 churches of Asia. But we don't listen to that. We don't see that. We completely tear it out of the context and we apply it to today. So these are the 2 things I wanted to touch on in this video. Just these ideas, because now, I wasn't completely fully aware that they had these little technical terms to them, presentism and reification. So you can use that now, when you're debating with your friends, and of the examples I've given, you can see how it's misapplied, and you can go further with it yourself. Something else I was looking at, I don't know how I came across this. I guess it's, I was in the attic, just hanging out in my attic recently, and I came across this little book here. And it's a little book of poems by the poet Robert Burns, who's actually from Ayrshire, which is where I'm from in Scotland. And I'll read you a little stanza here from To a Louse. It says, "All would some power the gift to gie us, to see ourselves as others see us. It would frae mony a blunder free us, and foolish notion that airs and dress and gait would lea us in devotion." And basically what that means is, Man, I wish I could see myself as other people see me, so that I could stop being so foolish, so that I could understand myself a bit better. And it kind of took me back to that whole, this idea of know thyself. You heard that? You heard that said, know thyself. Where does that come from? Well, apparently it kind of comes out of Greek mythology. One of the first instances is where it's told that Prometheus, it's like he's just fed up of being cursed to this cliffside, you know, and he wants to have a word. He wants to have a word with Zeus. But then the demigod Oceanus, let's just say Seamus, comes and says, look, know thyself, right? Who are you to be talking to him, man? Just, you know yourself. Which basically meant in that context to understand your station in life, not to step outside of your role. You know, you're Prometheus. You don't call out Zeus like that. But you know, I think Socrates and Plato, they kind of played with it a bit more, and see it as more of like an invitation to introspection. And you have the Socratic method, don't you? Which is about asking questions, you know, from pupil to mentor. And as I was reading through some information today, you know, it could be seen as the dialogue between yourself and your soul almost. You could look at it that way if you're trying to really understand the depths of yourself. Socrates sort of had this idea that, you know, we have knowledge within us, that it's almost inherent inside man, and so wisdom is learning to recollect, which is an idea I've heard espoused from, and don't get me wrong, I'm sorry if I got this wrong, but I think it's an idea I've heard from Gnostic mysticism recently. So I mean, I'd recommend you check out that channel to see a more expansive elaboration on these kinds of ideas. But I thought it was really interesting. It kind of reminds me of something I've looked at in education, you know, this idea of psychological nativism, where they believe that human beings are born with the apparatus, the mental apparatus, to actually engage with the world in such a way. That it's not quite the same thing, but that contrasts with cognitivism and behaviouralism. just believe me on that. I'm not going to get into it because I haven't studied it in a while. But certainly nativism is this idea that we have these language acquisition devices. I think that's a term that Chomsky came up with. So that we're already primed to learn how to speak and to interact and to sort of get ourselves going in the world. But you can go deeper than that, you know. You can certainly go deeper than that if you're going to look at it spiritually. Certainly, I was watching some videos recently of some testimonies where people recall in their younger years being able to communicate with deceased relatives and to see apparitions, if you will. You know, and you can take that with a grain of salt, obviously. You know, it's a bit fanciful, it's a bit out there, but you know, it's certainly quite interesting. And it kind of, I was talking about Gnostic mysticism. I was looking into this quote from the Gospel of Thomas, saying 3 actually, which is relevant to this, where it says, Jesus said, "If those who lead you say to you, 'See, the kingdom is in heaven,' then the birds of heaven will go before you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will go before you. But the kingdom is within you, and it is outside of you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will know that you are the sons of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you are in poverty, and you are poverty." That's a really powerful message, I feel. There's a lot in that, isn't there? And if you want to find out more about it, go to Gnostic Mysticism's channel and go to saying 3 of the Gospel of Thomas. But for the example, you know, just for my purposes, you can certainly see here that there's a profundity to this statement. There's a profundity to it. And you can almost understand why the Catholics were persecuting the Cathars and why there was this misunderstanding that the Catholics had, and this, I don't know, it's kind of natural to respond in aggression to that, which you don't understand, and particularly to truth almost, because you can see the power of truth. And if you've got it wrong, then, and you're not spiritually mature, you're not going to adjust yourself. It's not going to be iron sharpening ironing. Ironing sharpening ironing. Yeah, I need to use my voice more. I've been studying too much recently. I need to pronounce my words better. So, iron sharpening iron. Instead, we have people sharpening their blades to draw blood, and you know, we can see that there's a. If you're prone to reification, if you're prone to take abstract concepts and see them as physical realities, such as the transubstantiation, the error of the transubstantiation, then you're going to come into conflict with these Gnostic sayings, such as to know yourself. And, you know, there's more to that. Than I'm about to kind of shift gears here. You know, while I was in the attic, I came across some things, and no, I just found it quite interesting. You know, like when I found this little book of poetry here, and I read to you the poem from Robert Burns, To Allow, so that last stanza about having the power to see ourselves as others see us. It's a sort of call to know yourself better. And on a surface level, hey, you know, the attic proved to be quite fruitful. You know, I found this picture. It's kind of weird the way it's cut out like this, and I thought it was my mum, but it's not. This is actually my grandmother, who bears a striking resemblance to my mother, although she's kind of laughing in that one, so it's not quite the same, but you know, you can see that. So you can see that, man. There's a family resemblance there. And then I found this picture of my grandfather on my mother's side. I don't see much of a resemblance, to be honest, but yeah, he was a counsellor for I think it was 35 years. He came back from World War II. He was a painter and decorator, I think. Yeah, a man with a trade, and he kind of got into that. I actually found a letter. This letter addressed to my grandpa William. And I've not opened this yet. This is the first time I've seen this. So here we have the fourth bridge. Now this is actually kind of something weird is happening here. Something quite strange is happening here, and you'll find out in a second why that is. So there's the fourth. And it says the fourth bridge centenary. Okay, and if I open it up, it says, during the years 1883 to 1890, there arose above the waters of the Firth of Forth a steel colossus, the like of which had never been seen before, at 110 metres, 361 feet, to the top of the main cantilever towers, and 2.53 kilometres, that's 1 mile, and 1,005 yards from shore to shore. The great structure was the wonder of its age. It is the crowning achievement of the greatest century in human history, and its cost at the same time £3.5 million made it the moonshot of its generation. The frontiers of technology had never been pushed out so far in the process of a single project. The need for the effort was simple. The North British Railway Company was under competitive pressure from the Caledonian Railway, its great rival, and it was clear that a rail link across the Forth estuary was now inevitable. Lessons had been learned following the disaster of the Tay Bridge collapse in 1879, and steel was now available. On December 21st, 1882, a contract was placed with Tancred, Arrol and Co., a consortium led by William Arrol of Glasgow. In charge of the designs were John Fowler and Benjamin Baker. On March 4th, 1890, the HRH, Prince of Wales, drove in the 6,500,000th rivet and declared the bridge open. Knighthoods were conferred upon Arrol and Baker, and Fowler became a baronet. The fourth bridge was the first all-steel bridge in the world. And there's a little picture of it there in its dimensions. What's so strange about that is, I'd never seen this picture before, this one right here. I'd never seen this picture before, right? And I'd never opened that envelope before. This is a picture of some of the men that constructed the Forth Road Bridge. And this guy here, this guy right here is my great-great-grandfather. Let's see if I can get him on camera. It's a little bit shaky. Him here. This mustachioed gentleman. Right here. It doesn't really show up very well. That was my great-great-grandfather, William Taylor. So there you go, he actually worked. He was actually these are the enginemen and hoistmen of the Forth Bridge. Yeah, that's incredible. What a coincidence, eh? So obviously these two men would never have met, but there you go. Okay, what else did I find? Is there anything else interesting I found? Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. Hold on. I found some pictures like of my dad. Some nice pictures. Like my dad passed away in 2008. That's a nice picture of my dad there with my brother. And I found another picture of my dad. He was one of these snake preachers. You know, that's him with his snake. I'm kidding on, that was just him holding a snake this one time. What else? Well, you can probably see behind me there's a calendar. There's a calendar hanging up. The reason that's there, I'm counting down the days to another wonderful trip. I'm hoping to go back to America soon and I can spend this $5 bill here. I thought I'd spent all my money. But there you go, I found this in a pair of jeans after washing them. And also found this small book up in the attic as well. It's called Thoughts for the Months by the Reverend Houston, and I'll read from you two small extracts. Looking for the Good. Many years ago, an eminent theologian published a book with the somewhat intriguing title, An Apology for Rogues. What he did was simply to take as his theme those characters of both the Old and New Testament whom we are perhaps inclined to disparage, and place them in a more favourable and acceptable light. Without delving into the psychological complexities of behaviourism, one can subscribe to the old Scots saying, "There's a lot of good in the world if we just take time to look for it." This search for the intrinsic goodness in personalities and situations can provide a salutary exercise in humility and an interesting and often entertaining study of human relationships. Its real value, though, is that a close search may lead to a small appreciation of the discernment, understanding and sympathy which were so characteristic of the Master whose we are and whom we seek to serve. I can agree with that. I think to a point it's good to look for the redeemable and righteous attributes of those you interact with, particularly when there's a master-mentor relationship. I've had a couple of friends cry out to me because they haven't had particularly encouraging mentors, and that's not to say your mentors always have to be encouraging. There can be constructive criticism and there can be harsh words said sometimes, and you can use this as motivation, but you got to be careful not to crush the spirit of those under you. You know, if you're going to disciple some people, if you're going to mentor or parent your children, you want to make sure that you do so in the proper and correct way, so that there isn't any resentments or misunderstandings or anything like that. I think that's suitable. You know, if you're dealing with a more mature student, then, you know, you can maybe be a bit more harsh with them from time to time as a means of motivation, but you really have to read the person. You know, obviously you would treat a younger student and an older student differently. The other extract is called Into Action. By and large, we live in a spectator society. A few instances may serve to illustrate this point. For example, we look in on television, we listen to radio, we attend football matches. No doubt these are all very laudable and legitimate within their limits, but scarcely comprise the abundant life to which we are all called in the Master. Christianity, on the other hand, carefully avoiding the common but erroneous distinction between the secular and the religious, implies participation, a particular which embraces thinking, serving, loving and action. As someone has aptly put it, No game is ever won simply by standing on the touchline. Very true. Very true. I think it takes action, you know. And this is we can circle back to knowing again. I think people often ask me as preterists what we're supposed to do. Well, the first thing we have at our disposal is a certain knowledge. I'm not saying that's the richest quality of knowledge to have a decent understanding of how history played out and how we're supposed to understand the life of Jesus and his return in that. I'm not saying that's the richest form of knowledge, but it is a form of knowledge, and when you can expand on that and you can look deeper than that. So knowledge is a good thing to have, right? And then the expression of that knowledge is another thing as well. People often ask me, well, what does the church look like now if we're preterists? What does a preterist church look like? Well, I'll maybe expand on that in another video. I'll maybe expand on that in another video. But you know, one of the things that I heard recently that I thought was quite good was, you know, as Christians we should live lives that only make sense if God exists. You know, live a life that only makes sense if God exists. And I forget the person that said that, but I like that. And what does that mean? What would that look like? I think it's you live a life that's a bit more distinct from other lives. You know, you don't play it so safe. Maybe, you know, you do things that other people might think that's a bit strange. Why would you do that? It's a bit risky. Yeah, it's a bit different. Why are you being so weird? You know, but maybe not weird to the extreme, but that's fine. You know, people have said, you know, Paul the Apostle said, you know, I bet my life looks foolish to some people, but hey, I've got a certain knowledge, and that knowledge that I have has been expressed in this way. So yeah, that's me. That's what I've been up to. Thank you for staying with me, and I appreciate all the new subscribers I've got. I see I've just passed over 500 for the first time in 20 years of YouTubing, so that's fantastic. I think with the rest of my day I might do some painting. I have these oil paints here. If you want to suggest a theme, then leave a comment and ask me to paint it. Mind you, I've only got these small canvases, so nothing too expansive, but you know, if you want me to paint something for you, go ahead and I'll send it out to you as well. Got some Viridian, some sap green, some yellow ochre, some burnt sienna and burnt umber. It's going to be fantastic. You know, when it comes to painting, one of my favourite paintings is called The Butterfly Catcher. Is it? It's more like that's a gateway to what my favourite painting would be. That's probably not my favourite painting. You know, Tenacious D Tribute, that's what that painting is. It's not the greatest painting in the world, not by any stretch, but it's a tribute to it. And what I mean by that, it's the emotion that it evokes from within me. But it's not the purest distillation of the of art. You know, it's not quite there. It's almost there, but it's not quite there. And what I mean by that is when you look at it, it's, well, first of all, it's a very, you can almost feel the closeness of the heat in that picture, just by the way that kind of the light is diffused and has a sort of thickness to it. You know, it's the way the value changes as it goes back, and you have this wonderful, like, little forest scene, which is just so enchanting. It's so enchanting. And then you have this figure in it. And maybe this is why it's not quite the perfect painting for me, because you know what the figure's doing there. It's called The Butterfly Catcher, and there's a person there. I think it would be a better painting if it wasn't called The Butterfly Catcher, if it didn't have that title, because then it would more strongly elicit that which I'm feeling, you know, that which it kind of gets out of me. It's like you just look at this painting and you see this character there, just standing there, and he looks kind of peculiar, out of place. What's he doing there? But you know what he's doing. He's catching butterflies. Why is he catching butterflies though? What's he doing, man? I'm having a breakdown. No, but it's so cool. It's so interesting. It's like I just want to paint something like that. Just a beautiful kind of landscape, kind of enchanting and mysterious, and put a figure in it. And what's that figure doing there? Like, what is that scene all about? Who is that? What's their story? So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like putting people in paintings isn't my deal, especially if it's like a landscape that looks quite nice. Like just putting a person in there, it's like, what are they doing there, man? They're ruining it. They're ruining it. But I don't know, sometimes having that human presence can just be so interesting. Like, what are they doing there? What is going on? What am I doing? Seriously, I need to go and paint. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. This has been an interesting video. Really interesting. I hadn't seen those things before. You know, the connection between my great-great-grandfather and the Taylor side, and my grandfather on the Rankin side of the family. So, yeah, really interesting. Thanks again for watching, and God bless.